All right. Looks like we are live, guys. Welcome to the Data Center News Show. I am Howie, stepping in for Amy, who gave me the keys to the studio, which was a pretty brave move. But we will do our best to talk about what's going on in the data center industry and topics that are hot right now. I'll go around the horn here and let everybody introduce themselves. Matt, maybe tell us who you are, what you do, how you got here.
Yeah, how did I get here? Well, first off, Matt Miles, the Senior Vice President of External Affairs for Type 1 Energy. Type 1 Energy is a private fusion technology company. Um, we are developing fusion power plant. We've got a customer here in the Tennessee Valley and Tennessee Valley Authority working to build a plant out at a retired coal site. The Bull Run Power Plant retired a couple years ago or last year. They're demoing it, they're clearing the space for us to go build a 400 megawatt power plant. How did I get here? 25 years in energy. Started as a roughneck in the Gulf, formerly known as Mexico, and worked my way into industrial sales. Got a degree in finance and economics, and started selling widgets into the fission sector in 2006. And then I found myself selling small modular nuclear power plants around the world for about 6 years. And then I got into fusion about 9 years ago. So yeah, I don't do math or science for the company. We've got a team of PhDs that does the hard stuff. So, and how did I get here? I met Amy at the Data Center World Congress in DC. I was on a panel there, and she enlisted me. So yeah, happy to be here though.
That's great. Amy's great at grabbing people and pulling them in. It's amazing.
He bought me a free lunch, so we discussed things.
Oh, one lunch, get on show.
Well, it was a buffet, right? So yeah,
right.
Couldn't beat the price, but no, it was great.
You were full.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Curtis.
Hi, everybody. Curtis Friesen. I'm the Director of Market Development for the Mission Critical Division of Victaulic. I'm also a digital infrastructure consultant for the International Data Center Authority. How did I get here? I got here by way of the 451 research, then BigO, and Data Center Dynamics, then TAS Energy, then IDCA, and now Victaulic. And that's 15 years worth of just winging it.
That's awesome.
and thanking my lucky stars that I accidentally got into this business. And I'm afraid we barely even scratched the surface. So I'm excited.
I think we all are. As busy as we are, it's pretty amazing what we're going through. For sure. Thank you. And LS Electric, Andrew, our sponsor. Can't forget you. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks, Howie. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to nice meeting some new people. So how did I get here? I think I came across Amy on LinkedIn, and we connected, and we've chatted, and she didn't have any sponsors, and I said, I have a little bit of money in my budget, would this work? So we decided to start sponsoring back in January, and we've been very happy with the ability to sponsor. It's a great show. I've learned a tremendous amount of information and technology, and I look forward to learning more today. So I will be quiet unless you guys have a question in me. We're like everybody, it's a great industry to be in data centers right now. It's a lot of fun. My past background, I used to work for Schneider Services, had some data center experience there. And in prior lives, I ran a bus company that made not busway, but made bus products for aerospace and defense, things that go fly and things that go under the water. So besides a bunch of other stuff. So it's been a lot of fun learning, adding on to all these different background things, and get here today at data centers and look forward to the next thing. So very interested in hearing about nuke power. I understand Canada's ahead of us, so that's one question I'd like you guys to answer. How can we catch up to Canada and others to get that power online? Thank you.
Andrew, I was told that Amy had an abundance of sponsors, and yet you made her an offer she couldn't refuse to be the exclusive one. Was that not the case?
It's not the case.
I believe she would be open for other sponsors if you're willing to throw somebody at her. Yes.
You only need one. You
I
only
am
need
the exclusive one now, but I don't expect it to last forever.
one.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, we hit a lot of different topics. That's what I love about the show is it just goes in a direction. It's like there's so many things to talk about in the data center industry, and it's so complicated. It's hard to understand for a lot of people that don't know it. But it's great to have expert matter on the show as well. And on my team, I've got Steven Schlenker join us today. Steven, go for it.
Nice to meet you guys. Steven Schlenker. I came from the real estate industry out of school, studied finance and economics also, Matt, and then went to Texas Tech. So I know they're probably going to lose the softball national championship today, but still fun to see them in there. And but came to Dallas, did commercial real estate, and then switched to data centers in 2020, right before the pandemic. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I was at Data Center Hawk for 4.5 years. Where it was when I left, I was senior analyst over North America. Joined Howie's team and have been at Avison Young for almost 2 years now, helping with a lot of powered land transactions. We've been doing a lot more leasing lately, and
I think it's him, not me.
Steven's
broker
AI.
side develop. Am I here? Hello?
In and out. There you go.
We got you.
Okay. So it's interesting to help on the transaction side to see how people value different forms of power. Definitely grid connectivity is still king by a long shot. So it's interesting to hear this stuff. But I'd say that my subject matter expertise is adjacent to this, but it's not directly this, but it's good to be on with you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Steven. Jumping in, and we want to talk about nukes today is, and I had to actually do a little research because I didn't even really understand it myself, with the difference between fission and fusion. And I understand that fission is just is that pulled together a smaller fusion, and fusion is a smaller version of fission. And is
Nope.
that, do I have it correct?
No, I've never heard it actually described it that way. So we'll
Mixing it up.
Well, they're two reactions that happen on a nuclear scale, nucleus, atomic scale, but they're polar opposites. So fission is actually splitting heavier elements, right? So in our case, uranium-235 enriched up to about 5%. Uranium is mined in a yellow cake. The Canadians use it as unenriched in their reactor design, called the CANDU. They've got to build a lot of them. They constant state of refueling. In the U.S., the commercial fission industry enriches uranium to a little bit less than 5%, and then they manufacture fuel pellets. This happens to be about the size and scale of a uranium fuel pellet, and then they stick it in a rod. They stack them up. They put them all in there, and then they hit them with neutrons to start a chain reaction. So whenever you split these atoms, they release amount of energy. And without the proper controls to moderate and slow down that, you have what they call the meltdown, right? It just gets out of control, and it's a chain reaction, unmitigated. So fission is splitting heavier elements. And it's really, really easy to start, can be a challenge to control and stop. 3 Mile Island, got away from it, took off, it melted. The plant and the safety systems did their job. Nobody was injured or exposed to radiation from that accident. Fusion, on the other hand, is actually the most common reaction in the universe. It's what powers the sun and all the stars. And in our case, we use very light atoms, hydrogen isotopes, deuterium, which is heavy water, comes from seawater, and tritium, which is hydrogen 3. It doesn't naturally occur on Earth, so you have to manufacture it, right? So what we do is we fuse those together. So the sun is held together by essentially keeping open a black hole, right? The gravity, the magnetic pull that's holding all that hydrogen together is creating the conditions for these atoms to fuse and release about 4 times more energy than it takes to, when you split an atom, you release a boatload of energy. When you fuse atoms, you release about 3 to 4 times more energy. It's equals mc squared. So what we do on Earth is we don't have the luxury of this deep gravitational force. So we have to create the conditions that for fusion, it's a function of 3 things: hot enough, close enough, long enough. They call it the Lawson criteria. And in our case, we create a magnetic field in a vacuum using magnets. And then we inject deuterium and tritium. We keep them in that magnetic field without touching anything long enough, and then hot enough. When they get going really fast, they'll actually run into each other and fuse. So that's the hot enough, close enough, long enough, the Lawson criteria, NT tau, the triple product. There's 1,000 different ways of naming this, but we create fusion conditions. We fuse deuterium and tritium. The release of energy comes out in the form of a neutron, and the spent fuel product is helium. So we don't have a long-term, legacy radioactive waste that we have to deal with. So
you said helium is a byproduct?
Helium is a byproduct.
Interesting, because we lack, I guess, that we're running out of helium, right? So
we are running out of helium.
Another byproduct that actually benefits from.
Yeah, and we've done the business case, and it's not really enough to move the helium market, unfortunately. But yeah, so we don't have a long-term legacy waste. So I mentioned earlier, fission is really, really easy to start, can be hard to stop. On the other hand, fusion is tremendously hard to start, really easy to stop. So it's inherently safe. So it's literally the other end of the spectrum, splitting atoms, pushing them together, no chain reactions, no legacy waste. It's just nobody's figured out how to do it yet.
So
commercially,
in the context of this conversation, we're talking about fission, right?
We're talking about we're talking fusion and fission. That's the difference between the two.
Right.
Yes. So small modular reactors, SMRs, are fission reactors, which I sold for 10 years. I know that sector very well. I think that's one of the reasons Amy asked me to come on, was I could kind of juxtapose the two.
Yeah.
So what you see is a lot of speculation, projects, PPAs, offtake agreements with fission reactors, right? They're the most common. Meta's got a deal. Oklo, Meta, an SMR, Nano Nuclear, all of these companies have offtake agreements. The challenge there is, in fission, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is very specific about licensing the design of the reactor, where you can build it, construction license, how you can build it, and then how you operate it. So just to get a reactor design may take 3 to 5 years. To get a site license, you're probably going to spend about 3 years developing the application that you're going to submit to the NRC, and they're going to take from 1 to 3 years actually approving that, right? Because the consequences of failure of a fission reactor, we've seen it, right? It can be catastrophic. I think they're safe if they're operated safely within the parameters. I live within 6 miles of two very large units that Duke Energy operates. I'm not afraid of fission, and I don't think anybody should be. But they're very limited where you can build these things. Fusion, on the other hand, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission said, this is different. It's safe. We're going to let the states, under the agreement state protocol, license or permit the construction. So the state of Tennessee just announced 2 days ago that they have developed a framework for licensing fusion power plants. We're the first applicant. They've got 6 months, and it cost me $50,000 by rule to issue me a permit. And I'm going to build this plant at a retired coal site that does not have a nuclear site license. So the flexibility of fusion from being able to deploy where it's needed is very different than how and where you would deploy and license a fission technology. That's one of the differences here. But looking back, you can look at, fission reactors. I think at one point the U.S. had 108 maybe operating. I think the number's now below that. But operational experience, we know how they work. If you do it right, they're safe and they can last up to 80 years. And the small modular reactors are notionally, if you make something that's really big and expensive smaller, it would cost less. But there's only one reactor in this. I think there's 127 different SMR designs out there, fission reactors, and only one of them has a design license in the United States.
Wow.
Which one is that?
NuScale.
Oh,
They
NuScale,
have a
right?
50 megawatt design and a 70 megawatt design. So, I mean, even the contracts that these companies have to offtake power are with reactor companies that don't have a license yet. Now, they've been working on it, and they will eventually get there. But that's the only reactor design in the SMR and advanced fission space that has a design license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Yeah,
We say
that the Oklo Aurora is currently under review, but I think it's been under review for 7 years.
The company that I work for will go unnamed. We're a very large nuclear manufacturer, and we did a joint venture with a company and set up a small modular reactor company. We were one of the leaders, one of the first. We had 500 FTEs. We were spending a few $1 million a week to develop a design application to get to the NRC. And I don't know, maybe $500 million into that process, they pulled the plug. So because the NPV, we weren't even going to make money for another 8 years. So that's been a long time ago, but it's very challenging fission for a number of reasons. And then the supply chain on where you can get your parts. I got into fission. I set up a nuclear accredited division in a steel company. So I was selling the nuts and bolts and the pipe and the fittings to build out the new nuclear renaissance that never happened. But I learned a lot about supply chain, and we were one of only 4 suppliers in the United States that could sell nuclear steel because they had all gone away because, the demand wasn't there. So fission has a very limited supply chain. You have to have the N-stamps or for different parts of the nuclear steam supply system, where in fusion that just does not apply. Again, because the consequences of failure between the two technologies are very different.
So fission using more water for steam generation and turbines versus fusion, your enclosed system harnessing the energy coming off the fusion.
So imagine a coal boiler is a heat source.
Same.
A fission reactor is a heat source. A fusion machine is a heat source. So we'll still have the conventional steam cycle on the back end. So it would use about the same. Efficiencies are a little bit different. But another really unique thing about fusion is the fuel I mentioned. It's virtually limitless because there's, I don't know, a couple of 100 billion years worth of deuterium in the oceans. And on the inside of the machine, I'll manufacture the tritium side. So when we do levelized cost analysis, you have that bar stack chart, right? And there's always a bar in there for fuel. If you did it to scale, you wouldn't be able to see my line, but I put a line in there just to say I've thought about it. But this line is actually too thick. It should be smaller because over the life of the plant, it really doesn't register. It's like 10 to the minus 4 cents a kilowatt. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I could buy a cylinder of deuterium gas from Amazon Science for about $2,600. That would run a 400 megawatt power plant for a year. Now, on the tritium side, it's complex of how we manufacture the tritium part. We extract it, put it back in. But it's a closed fuel cycle. But from the economics of fuel predictions, I don't need pipelines. I don't need the whole fission economy of how you mine and you enrich and then you compress and manufacture the fuel pellets, then you put them in fuel assemblies, and then you ship them and you drop them in and you keep them cool for 5 years after they come out of the reactor because they're too hot. I don't have any of that. So
Yeah. Matt, it's interesting because they, I don't know if I'm quoting this wrong, from Dave Smith from Idaho Labs. He talked about how, what's the whole U.S. Navy fuel cost is something like $50 million a year because it's a nuclear powered fleet, right? And it's super inexpensive to operate.
Yeah, and going back to the company I work for, they had a different name than they do now, but they manufactured every reactor that the Navy has ever put to sea. They didn't design them all, but they manufactured. They are the exclusive manufacturer of the U.S. Naval reactor program and the fuels. So we actually had a leg up on making reactors. But the difference with the Navy is, this would be 5% enriched. What the Navy will run is almost 100% enrichment. So we were seeing that the fuel core that we would load into a boat was good for 30 years without ever bringing it back because of the enrichment. So we're kind of working ourselves out of a market here. So it's like, what's next? Well, maybe we do SMRs or something. So, but it is different. But
from a hyperscaler's perspective, if you can know what your set power costs and supply is going to be for 20 to 30 years,
right?
I mean, that's huge.
It's
right. You've got certainty of capacity, and there's no combination of alternative power sources right now that can provide that.
And you look at right of ways for pipelines. Here in the Tennessee Valley, there was a plant it was a gas plant that was drew the ire of a country music singer. Probably Google this, and he called the president, and the president called the TVA and said stop. And it was really a lot to do with right of way of the pipeline going through the farmland. So that's a challenge too. So if you talk about the access to fuel, but like you said, Curtis, the predictability of the fuel cost, i.e. being virtually nothing, is what really gets the
-4
10 to the -4 cents a kilowatt
per kilowatt.
It's noise. It's
that's not even a cost.
Like what?
So the reason, though, on the other side is that our industry is seeing. I mean, I know that they're trying to implement nuclear, but the reason that they're pursuing other alternatives so far as gas and solar and some of the other potential behind the meter solutions is because nuclear is so expensive on the front end, but it is as you get going, then it stabilizes because its cost doesn't go up, whereas you're always paying for gas. And so I was curious where do you think that those probably meet as far as when does the cost stabilize as far as megawatt hour cost per megawatt hour? Does it take 15 years? Does it take 30 years? I don't really know.
We see it. So for the overnight construction costs, right? The upfront CapEx to actually build a plant on a fission plant is astronomical, right? If you look at, especially first of a kind, the most recent example are the two AP1000 units, units 3 and 4 in Georgia that they finished and brought online. I think they brought on unit 4 last year before. The contract was, I think, for around $7 billion a unit, and it turned out to be about $17 billion a unit.
Rounding error.
It's change, something that Bezos or Elon could have, in the backseat of their van. But now, if they had continued to deploy those, you would get those first of a kind costs. You'd get that to come down. But those plants will probably break even in 10 years. I mean,
really,
it's a back end 2,000 megawatts, or actually, I think they operated a little over 1,000 a piece. Firm base load during peak. I mean, they just print money if you can get over that initial, overnight cost. Now, our first unit, and I'm saying all the differences between fission and fusion. Fusion, we haven't as a species been able to create a commercially viable fusion power plant yet. Nobody's tried. There's about 20 of us that are trying. There's about 4 of us that are close, right? We're designing our power plant right now.
Interesting.
We have a site for it. We're working with TVA on what it needs to do. Now, scientifically, we have created fusion ignition. We did it in a national lab a couple of years ago, and since then they've recreated that and multiplied the output. They've gotten a lot better at it. So that proved that we understand enough about the process to create the codes to build a machine to make it happen, right? So we know it. We know how to do it. And then we were able to replicate it and make it better and better and better. And that's what gives the investors that invest in our companies and companies like mine I guess the warm and fuzzy that, okay, now let's turn this into a commercial power plant, which is really hard. So, we call it the net gain, more energy out than it took to create the reaction. What they did in California was scientific net gain. From a science standpoint, they were able to do that. And what we're doing now is we're building a machine that will produce more energy than it takes to create the reaction. But, and my friends, still got a lot of friends on the fission side. They're like, but nobody's done it before. I'm like, things that have never happened ever happen every day.
Yeah.
Some are small, some are,
it's interesting, Matt, because the public perception and understanding of data centers it's difficult, right? And when it comes down to nuclear as well, if I ask a number of people, like, do you know how many nuclear power stations there are in the country? We've got 55 nuclear power stations and 96 reactors actually operating. They've been built in the 60s, 70s, and most of. And I would imagine for us right now, public perception is such a big hurdle and so hard and difficult to work through. For nuclear, like how when the public are you by right, or does the public get involved and say, hey, we want or don't want that in our market?
Yeah. So when I first started, when I was asked to join a fusion company, I asked 3 questions, actually 4, other than how much are you going to pay me, obviously, but it was, what's the waste profile? Do you have a long-term waste? Because that was always a problem.
Right.
With a challenge, at least it's still to this day in the United States. If you Google Earth, any of these fusion power or fission plants, you'll see out somewhere there will be all these canisters lined up. That's the old reactor cores out there, because we don't have a national repository. They tried to build one in the 90s called Yucca Mountain out in Nevada.
Right.
They spent $10 billion getting it ready. And somebody said, not in my backyard, a powerful senator, and they killed it. So there's still, and each power company was paying the government to build that. And then they won a lawsuit a couple years ago because the government never delivered. So the judge said, give them their money back, U.S. government.
Wow.
So you had a long-term waste. What do we do with the spent fuel? It's radioactive for 100,000 years, right? We got to do something with it.
Send it to space.
Yeah. I've also shoot it at the sun. Well, what happens if it doesn't make it and it comes back on us, right? So that was so the answer to that was there's no long-term legacy waste. I'm like, is it safe?
Right.
They said inherently it can't melt down. And then I'm like, is it proliferable? Can you make bombs out of it? Because I ran into treaties when I was selling SMRs internationally. They said, no, you can't, right? I'm like, well, what's the problem? And they said, well, nobody's done it before. I'm like, sign me up. This will be easier than what I've been doing, And this was 2010-ish, whenever shale gas hit the U.S. market and the demand for fission baseload firm was just gone. So, but it's the differences are such that the social license that we did not have in fission because of 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and then Fukushima, they see these accidents. We assume, but we're now testing in fusion that we would get that social license because it is safe. There's no waste and you can't make bombs out of it. And to test that is maybe a kind of unfair because I'm in the heart of the cradle of nuclear research here in West Knoxville, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where Oppenheimer, designed the weapon. There's a weapons complex 10 minutes away from me, Oak Ridge National Lab. So, but we had a town hall 2 Saturdays ago out near the site in a community center. We had about 150 people show up on a Saturday morning, and they were asking the questions. Well, water usage, how are you going to do this? I'm like, well,
Right.
like you would any other plant. You got the river here. We bring through, whether it be once through or some cooling towers. We're going to put the water back. Everybody thinks that these things just drink water, right? No, you use it to cycle through. And then the other was, is it safe? Yes. Is it going to be loud? No. I mean, they had a coal plant operating for 66 years that put out 850 megawatts. They
Right.
had 4 D6 cat dozers just pushing coal 24 hours, 7 days a week. So they're like, no, it's not going to be loud. And what's the
Yeah.
traffic?
How many diesel?
Is it safe? What did they think? What did they think you were going to say? Is it safe? No, it's not safe at all. No.
So I said, don't ask.
Your government's looking out for you. You're good.
Yeah. I had the
Don't
Oak
worry.
Ridge National Lab director there. I had the state of Tennessee, the TDEC, the lady who was
Mhm.
doing all the licensing there. I had the head of nuclear engineering, the department head for University of Tennessee there. And then I had our employees who live in the area where we're going to build this there. So I'm like, don't trust me. I'm the sales guy, right? Of course I'm going to say it's safe.
Right.
But I actually had a man come up to me and say, in 1959, I was a senior in high school and I wrote my term paper on stellarators. Stellarators is our approach to fusion. It's just kind of like a cruller. It's a twisty looking thing. It looks kind of weird. And the first stellarator was built in the early 1950s. I'm like, this guy knows more about stellarators than I do, right? So,
Wow.
But to your question, Howie, the next day there's a Reddit feed, and there was a couple that had gone to their residents, and they're like, what we think we heard was, this is going to be fine. What say you, community, right? Reddit. And I'm like, here we go. So there was about 45
Right.
responses. None were negative.
Oh.
And it's like, wow, this is really cool. Now, again, we are in the cradle of nuclear research. So a lot of people probably, in the area were opining. They're supportive. So I wouldn't say that that's it's not a blind test, right? But it was really remarkable, the outreach and we had a lot of questions around safety and what do you do with
Right.
waste. But it was different.
Data centers have never been a bomb. So we have it's a little bit easier for us in that respect. And so for you,
Right.
the perception, right?
The perception is reality, right? And there's two things that can kill fusion power mass market adoption. One is we don't have enough money to finish the design and actually build one of these, and the second one is the NIMBY. The approach, the lack of a social license. So there's a company in Massachusetts that's a competitor. We're portfolio, brethren, I guess. We have some of the same investors, and they're doing that outreach because they have a project with Dominion Energy. Actually, it's not with Dominion. I think Google's one of their off takers there. Yeah. So now they're going to build, own, operate the plant. I'm an OEM. I'm just going to make the kit, right? Or I'm going to provide the fusion machine. I'm going to have somebody else make it, but like a Westinghouse or a Siemens or a GE, we supply you the equipment. You go make power utility, whatever. I'm not going to build, own, and operate these things.
Okay.
I can't scale if I'm going to build, own, and operate these things. I want to sell them to whoever needs them and whoever wants to buy them.
Hey, Matt, I've got a question on the cost side. A few weeks ago, we were at a DICE conference in Bethesda, and we had the opportunity to hear directly from the U.S. Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright.
Right.
Yeah, he came and spoke for a brief time, but it was great for him to show up and he applauded all the great work and progress that we have as an industry have made so far, especially in terms of this AI race against China, essentially.
Yep.
And one that we fundamentally cannot lose. But also conveying how much support that this administration is eager and willing to give on the power side. However, he had limited time and he wasn't able to get into any specifics.
Yeah.
From your seat, are you seeing any possibility of government subsidies in helping fund the research and the deployment and development of SMRs?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at the ARDP program, Advanced Reactor Development Program. They just made an $800 million award to two companies. I want to say about 3 months ago. One of those companies is GE for the Clinch River SMR, right? So they got 400 million of that 800. So there's a subsidy, if you will, or a grant from DOE. That's a program that was set up a few years ago. In the case of fusion, in the first Trump administration Energy Act of 2020, they set up what they call a milestone-based reimbursement program to design fusion power plants. My company's one of the awardees, right? So we negotiate milestones with DOE. We say, we're going to do this. And if we get there and you agree, then you pay us back. It's like a cost share. But I take all the risk up front, put all the money in, do all the work, say, hey, right, here's what we think we accomplished. Do you agree? Yes. And then they pay me back no more than 50% of it, right? So it's all risk borne by the awardee. So there's that in fusion. So, and if you go back early days, 2010, when I was with the other company, that company was the first awardee of a technical cost share for SMRs. I think it was around $200 million. And that was just to get the design licensed. So again, fusion doesn't need a design license. We don't need a construction permit, an early site permit, a fuel license. I mean, this fuel would need to be licensed, this design. That takes 10 years generally. So the speed and the agility at which fusion can move relative to fission is really guided by the regs and the framework. So, and the reason I bring that up is, I try to end every post on LinkedIn or whatever, hashtag sooner than you think, right? When I think of fusion, and when we get into these conversations with the developers, with hyperscalers, that, we as a sector, some of us feel like, and I'll be the first to say, hey, our schedule has slipped or whatever, is that we would probably be on the grid at the same time or 1 or 2 years after the first SMR will be on the grid. So fusion-wise. Fusion-wise. So our projection is on the grid in 2034 with a 400 megawatt plant. That's the first of a kind plant. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be ugly, but it's going to work. And then our nth of a kind would probably be bigger and a lot cheaper. So fission-wise, are there opportunities to fast track some of these deployments by maybe getting grandfathered in underneath some like pre-existing permits and licenses that are attached to pre-existing facilities that can be repurposed, like 3 Mile Island, for example? I think so. If you look at, for instance, there's only one site that has specifically received an early site permit for SMRs, and that's Clinch River, where the GE BWRX 300 is going to be built one day. The company I work for, we started that ESP project in 2010. So still nothing's been built out there. But to your question, Curtis, if you think about sites like the Kewaunee nuclear power plant up on, I think it's in Wisconsin, that's being decommissioned. That is a licensed site. A lot of the licensing has to do with meteorological research and predictions, and also the seismic activities for that site. You got a lot of. Did you say meteor? No, meteorological.
Meteorological. Like what?
Yeah.
Weather.
Sorry. I speak Louisiana English. I'm not always.
I get it. It was like, make sure a tornado doesn't hit.
I also heard that at first, Howie. I was like,
what?
Well, you don't want these things to be hit by meteorites.
Yeah, put them where there's no.
Can I do that before I build a house?
That's
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a Met tower. sites that have had an existing reactor operational would be very likely candidates for, you'd have to amend the license for that to support a different technology, a different design. A lot of the site license in fission has to do with the complexity of the technology. We're talking advanced reactors. The SMRs are generally light water, PW, pressurized water reactors, or BWRs. Those are the two, primary. That's what the Navy uses. That's what Admiral Rickover chose, and that's what was approved, and that's what most of the commercial reactors are now. There's a lot of different fuels in the advanced reactor space that are safe. They won't melt. They won't run away. They'll get hot, and then they'll kind of, depending on the moderator, whether it be a liquid molten salt or something else, they'll be safe. Now, there's none of those have been licensed. None of them are commercial yet. But maybe the site license for them, since they would be considered safer or more stable, then there may be some relaxation on the siting of that. But right now, there's, I think, 170 retired coal plants in the United States, and none of them have a nuclear site license. I don't need one. That's not to say that they couldn't be repurposed.
Let me ask you, Matt, as we look at and we're doing this transition from utility grid, which the data center industry is mainly focused on, as getting tight. And now we talk about islanded power solutions, and we solve it with a number of different fashions here. And we look at the problem with islanded power solution is 5 nines, because how many gas turbines you're going to have to back up a gas turbine that goes down, and that's the benefit of the grid is you're going to, maybe if you have a utility line that drops out, you're going to be able to move that load from another area and get back up and going quicker. How does nuclear look at that as you come in? And obviously there's a lot of servicing you have to do on the SMRs and making sure, can you do enough redundancy in an SMR to get a 5 nines? And I talked to GE, and GE even says on their turbines and combined cycle, they go, we cannot commit to 5 nines on an islanded power solution.
Yeah, if you think about fission, big gigawatt or small, that reactor core is only good for a number of months. Generally, you'll get 18 months out of one core in a large reactor. I know some of the other designs are looking for 2 years between refueling, so that thing can run flat out, right? For let's say 2 years. Then it's got to shut down for at least 30 days, maybe 40 days on a refueling outage. So you can't just, and I don't know how that, I'm not as familiar with the 5 nines, makeup, but
redundancy, so you don't go down, you don't interrupt.
You're going to lose a nuclear plant, fission.
99.9999.
Okay. Oh, 5 nines. I got you. Yeah. You're going to have to shut it down for a number of weeks and months to refuel it every 18, 24 months.
Right.
So you would have, and there's not we talked about in SMRs a black start capability, and you'd have diesel generators out there that could start running the systems, get them spooled up. I don't know there's not a nuclear power plant in the U.S. that does not need the grid to get going. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, you have to have the grid power to come in and get the things moving and circulating.
How long can a fusion reactor go before getting refueled?
Well, refueling is not the limiter for us. It could, because we manufacture ours is just a gas, deuterium tritium gas. So if the machine and the plasma facing components didn't need to be replaced every couple of years, you could run it flat out. But so our base model and what we're developing is that maintenance outage, at least on the first unit, because we don't have any operational experience, right? We're making some assumptions on the materials inside the machine that are getting hit with these neutrons, how long they're going to last. But if the machine that we've designed uses existing materials that exist today, so I don't need to develop unobtainium for my machine to last for 2 years. I think these components could probably run for 2 to 3 years between replacement. I just don't know yet. I hadn't built it yet. But I would think as we mature and we get operational experience, and there's advances in some of these plasma facing materials, you could probably run a fusion plant. I'd say, the Gen 2 or the Gen 3 fusion plants, you're probably going to be running these things between 3 to 5 years before you have to shut down and replace a pump or something like that. Right.
Yeah. So, what's your guesstimate on how long you're shut down? For standard maintenance to replace those materials.
Our level 0 requirement is a 30-day outage. Just because that's what the utility sector, especially those who operate fission plants, are good with. They're comfortable with that. They can plan that. So a 30-day outage for me to change different sections and segments of my machine, stick them back together, and then fire the thing up. So notionally, you could have 2 units, like a combined cycle plant, where you have 2 on 1. You got a big turbine generator, and you have 2 HER6 blowing into one. Maybe I have 2 fusion machines, and I take one of them down, and the thing still, operates half throttle, and then the other one comes up. I mean, that's a lot of shuffling, for your data center on where you're going to, get the other makeup power. But there's nothing to say that I can't stack these things up.
Yeah, the Uptime Institute is going to have to start rewriting rules of redundancy based on modular reactors. You need, although I guess the same concept applies for 2N or N+1, right? Different.
Yeah.
And the other thing you might want to look at is energy storage systems, because that's a hell of a lot more acceptable in most cases than diesel. For the community, I'm saying, for noise and pollution, to augment the data center power. Just something to consider. Since you're generating power, you just charge the battery.
Yeah, and that's our customers talked about a hybrid. Maybe a big sodium battery. For storage. Because we don't take a fuel penalty because our cost of fuel is virtually nil. So we can run these things we can ramp them up or down. We're not getting hit on the fuel side, but at night, low demand. That's not to say we couldn't charge batteries or some thermal storage at night. Just run the thing flat out, and like you said, storage, and at least for peakers. I mean, here TVA is, I think they've got 33,000 megawatt demand peak. And but it peaks, and when it does, they everything comes on. They've got a lot of these simple cycle gas turbines that pay for themselves in about 3 days of operation, depending on the peak. So, but having that thermal storage that we charge overnight, could help with the peak.
Well, Matt, what do you think happens here? Where do you think we're at, and where do we go? Obviously, nuclear is a really great solution, managed correctly, which I'm sure it will be. But where do you think we go now? Because we're looking any avenue we can. We're doing thermal, power generation. We're doing anything we can do to get power.
Yeah, I think it's a good sector to be in. For me, whenever I was like I said, whenever I was with the SMR company, natural gas was $2 a million BTU, and there was no demand for what we were trying to do. So I'd go to Singapore where it was $20, but they'd never done fission. They didn't have any rules around it. They didn't want to do it. There's countries, Spain and New Zealand and Australia, that have prohibitions on fission. You cannot, by law, build a fission reactor there. Now they're trying to change that, right? But there's no prohibition on fusion. But I think the demand is a good thing for me as a technology developer and supplier. I think there's enough megawatts to go around for every type of power generation asset out there. So I'm not, we're not haggling over scraps here. I can be friends with the BWRX 300 folks. I am. I know the guy who runs that program quite well. So I think it's an all of the above right now. And at some point, when fusion, that I obviously feel very strongly about, proves itself that we can do it, and we can do it economically, in 50 years, that's what you will build. You will build a fusion power plant instead of a new fission plant or a new coal plant or a new gas. Use natural gas for something else, right? Burning hydrocarbons is probably not a good idea if you can do some type of engineered product with that and get 10x value for it.
Absolutely, right. That's what we're looking to get away from the best we can.
Yeah,
so
there's other things you can do with that, and but I think I think there's enough room for all the generation technologies to play in the United States and around the world for the next several decades. Most of the demand the demand was driven initially by electrification of everything. Then you had this energy transition push from a policy level, but now it's just sheer data center. And then you had crypto. The miners were hogs, and now the data center. It's remarkable. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was at the Edison Electric Institute annual meeting or biannual meeting. I was in Austin. And I was here, you can't see my office door is about 10 feet away from me. Elon Musk is sitting there talking to the CEOs of almost all the major utilities in the United States. And he told them, he said, I've heard it said many, many times that, the demand for energy in the U.S., electricity in the U.S. will double between now and 2050. He said, I'm telling you, it's going to triple between now and 2035.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, sure.
That's even conservative, too.
What's he talking about?
And now it's like, man, I know the guy's good, but, it's to your point, foundationally, Curtis, I mean, we have to win this race. If you've seen 1984, you don't want somebody else rewriting history, right? So, Secretary Wright has been really supportive of, three missions: AI, quantum, and fusion. Mm-hmm. And I think you need fusion to support AI and quantum. And he and I will agree to disagree on that topic. He actually studied fusion in undergrad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before he became a natural gas fracking, executive. So he kind of figured that out too, right? That's his claim to fame. But really good, really smart energy guy. But I think the government can do more. I'm not a libertarian, but I think it's that developmental valley of death, or this crevasse, right? From TRL3 or 5 to 8, where it's more narrow than it ever has been for fusion. We don't need any new foundational scientific breakthroughs to do what we're going to do. Frankly, the foundational science for how fusion happens is settled. It's just, can we engineer a machine that provides a product that the market will be willing to pay for?
Speaking of crypto, maybe one of the edges that we got a few years ago was when China banned crypto mining, and a lot of them came over to the U.S. and then to I think Kyrgyzstan, but the crypto miners were really on the forefront of a lot of the innovation that we are experiencing right now, right? Because they were willing to take risks.
Cheap power. Right.
Yeah, they were tapping into stranded natural gas in the middle of West Texas and converting it to electricity. They were the first ones to be doing that, really.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of them in Tennessee. I mean,
well, and now leave it to the data center industry to also be on the forefront of innovation in kind of a tangential way.
Yeah.
But it's really out of necessity. We're doing it because we have to. I don't think I'd like to be altruistic and say that we're doing it because we care about sustainability, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think we are just trying to keep up with the demand.
Yeah, and how we, one of the things that you have to have, I think, for anything to be successful, any new technology, big, mass market type serving technology, you need to have the right policy, the right regulations, and the people support and the pull of the market, right? There has to be a driver. Any one of these things goes away and it becomes really hard or almost impossible. So I think we've got almost all of these things for different reasons. I often say I spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill, going all the offices. Each office I could go down, regardless of policy affiliation. And every member agrees that fusion is important, maybe for different reasons.
Right.
And they publicly, there's bipartisan caucus in the House, there's one in the Senate around fusion, and there are for fission too. But now you're seeing people coming around to fission also. So I don't think it's just a matter of, you can't executive order and erase, statutory regulations for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. 10 CFR, the CFR part is Code of Federal Regulations. You can't undo that. They have a process, and it's just now the commission has done a really good job in trying to shave some of these review times off of these ESPs or COLAs or designs, but still it just takes a while.
Everybody's looking for somebody taking advantage of them, and everybody, I think you have all the components you need to move forward, except for the one thing we're not doing well enough is the public perception. Of course, there's always going to be a group that wants to focus on, hey, we're being screwed, somebody's taking advantage of us, and there's probably people out there that are doing things the wrong way to get it done. But you're heavily regulated, and data centers are as well, and that includes what water they push back out of the data center. That's monitored. The power we use, we're forced to buy renewables. There's so many things that are regulated and you're responsible for, but the public doesn't understand that. So I think it's really getting the message out there, and just communicating what is it, because it's easy to say it's bad and it's this with nothing else to support it.
Right. It's bad. Change my mind. Right. It's kind of, and I don't know a lot about data centers. I know generally, after going to that conference and listening to what, what's happening, I understand you need electricity to drive the center. You need electricity and water to cool the things. Absolutely. The scale was something that was lost on me until I started talking to some of the developers about how many thousands of acres, of like, are you kidding me? How much power does this thing need? But one of the things coming from the oil field, when I saw this article, I kind of perked up, was I think there's plans, I don't know, Texas or some of these other retired fields, you produce oil, you produce water, you get water, you got to take it out and put it back in the hole, right? I saw Steve was shaking his head, maybe saw the same article about using produced water to cool these things, or to, for data centers.
Reclaim commercial wastewater. It's called
absolutely.
We've discussed
not
that.
Potable. Use it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Loudoun County, in fact, was on the forefront of this infrastructure investment, and they used last year 800 million gallons of purple pipe to cool data centers, which means they saved 800 million gallons of blue pipe for potable residential consumption.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, Amy put me in charge. I'm sorry to say I could talk about this all day, but we've reached our hour. Went so quick, and such a great topic, Matt. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about it. I feel like I've learned a lot today from what you've shared here, and what we typically do is go around. If you want people to reach you, please tell them how to. If you don't you don't have to, but
type1energy.com. I think there's an about button. It's got a general info email address, or you can just do Matt, MATT.MILES at type1energy.com. There's two E's together in there. It's kind of weird, but it's right. You just spell it all out. Happy to answer questions. This has been great. Learning a lot about the data center market. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. What you guys are doing and trying to do is an imperative, right? And we're happy to support it however we can.
Appreciate that. Yeah, Curtis.
Yep. Curtis.friesen@victala.com right there. Or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I almost always will accept your request. And let me, how we just said, Matt, thank you so much. This was really awesome. Really appreciate appreciate having me on the show. It's super informative, and learned a lot.
Everybody contact Andrew too. How do they get you?
LinkedIn is the best way, or go to elliselectricamerica.com/contact us if you have any interest in finding out some information about our products or services. But anyway, I'd like to echo also what Curtis just said. Matt, pleasure. Learned a lot. I know the different types of nuclear reactors now. That's something I didn't know an hour ago. That's cool.
That was great.
Yeah, yeah, and
Thank you for sponsoring.
And I think
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's very interesting because I just while this was going on, I got a discussion topic from my boss who was talking about microgrids, and I can't think of a better microgrid than a small fusion reactor. So I think that's pretty cool. So I'm gonna bring your company's attention to my company, and who knows, maybe might be an opportunity to collaborate down the road, Matt.
Absolutely. If you look at Back to the Future, Doc Emmett Brown, when he came back with Mr. Fusion Home Fusion Reactor, I got the T-shirt. So if you go far enough in the future, we think we can make them small enough.
You need a big wig. You're gonna.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Steven, go for it.
Yes. Sorry that I had to carry the team, Matt, on this one. Just I really carried the conversation, kind of like Luke Longley carried the '90s Bulls. So, but just kidding. But it's great to be on and learn more about that space. And I mean, I think that our industry for sure is trying to catch up and learn. And so it's great to have you guys innovating and bringing these solutions. Right at the right time. So it's a great. I'm sure that there is lots of you continue to educate people in the future the same way we're trying to educate some people on data centers and trying to help people with some of the misconceptions. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah. The joke is fusion's 50 years away and always will be. The statement was actually, if you fund fusion right, it's 50 years away. If you don't, it always will be. I think we're funding it right. We're going to have it on the grid in the 2030s, whether it's us or somebody else.
Let's do it. Doing business here. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming and thank you for watching. Have a great day, everybody.
Howie. You didn't completely embarrass yourself. Well done.
What'd I do?
Good job hosting.
I'm not hosting. I'm done. I get to come back maybe. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
All right. See ya.